What is up, guys? Jason here, and I'm bringing you another historical deck profile. We are moving along in the timeline of the Duel Masters game. The deck I'm bringing you today is it's a pretty fun deck, and it actually served as the foundation for our Neo Beast Folk Mafia deck, if you've seen that deck profile. And it is the Liquid Beasts deck by Peter Sampai, who is the 14 and under division champion for the North American Continental Championships. Whoops, it says OCG here. It's meant to say TCG. I think you guys will be seeing that mistake a lot. How embarrassing. Anyway, this is a very aggressive kind of deck. It's curious to me as well, because it seems as if aggressive strategies tend to be more popular, or at least tend to be more effective within the younger age divisions. I've seen that in Pokemon as well, where the player groups are broken down based on age. Yeah, so I just thought that was a pretty interesting similarity that I found. So without further ado, let's get into the list. This guy is playing 4 Aqua Hulkas, 3 mana, 2k. When you play him, draw a card. Classic. He's also playing 4 Aqua Surfers. There's another Liquid People shield trigger. 6 mana, 2k. When he hits the field, bounce a creature. Can be any creature. More often than not, it'll be your opponent. But, you know, it's important to note that you can return some of your guys too. He's also got 4 Bronze Arm Tribes. This is a Beast Folk deck. 3 mana, 1k. Get a mana when he hits the field. He's also got 4 Corile. When he hits the battle zone, bounce one of your opponent's creatures to the top of their deck. He's a Cyberlord. That's relevant. Pretty annoying effect too. And we've also got Cryptic Totem. I haven't spent much time covering Cryptic Totem. I think he's a super good card. He's a double breaker, and while he's tapped, he turns off all of your opponent's shield triggers. So that's a really powerful effect for finishing the game, especially in a format where Mana Nexus exists. If you can imagine, if your opponent has like Mana Nexus in their shields, it can be quite annoying to play around, or if they use Mana Nexus to dump in a shield trigger. So Cryptic Totem is really good in helping bypass that. Now, part of the reason he's got 4 Coriles and he's got 4 Emeralds, who's also a Cyberlord, is because he's got 4 Illusionary Merfolk. That sounds super consistent to me. He's playing 4/4/4 Merfolk Engine. Big fan of that. I suppose 4 might seem like a lot, but I think this guy's just going for maximum consistency. He's going for maximum aggression, and that is something that I have to respect. So yeah, props to him. More on the Beast folks, we've also got 4 Quixotic Hero Swine Snout. Whenever another creature is put into the battle zone, this creature gets plus 3,000 power until the end of the turn. So that's pretty cool. It's important to note that if you were to summon 3 creatures in one turn, Quixotic Hero Swine Snout can actually kill pretty much any relevant boss monster at the time. You know, you think Bolmedius, you think Crystal Lancer, they're all going down to this guy. So if you play 1 creature, he's at 4k. You play 2, he's at 7k. And if you play 3, he's at 10k. So there's not a whole lot that's going to stop him. And for the last Beast Folk, we've got 4 Torkon, 2 mana, 1k shield trigger. Yeah, not a whole lot to say about this guy, really. If your opponent breaks him early, that's not good for them, because he can evolve into one of your 4 Barkwhip the Smashers. So if you've seen the budget deck profile for the Nature Light deck, you'll know that I am a big proponent for Barkwhip. I think, now I don't know if I should say I think he's underrated, because obviously people know he's good, but sometimes I'm not sure if people know quite how good he is. So he's a 2 mana 5k Beastfolk evolution. I think 2 mana is a very good cost for him, and so I guess another way you can think about it is he's like a 4 mana speed attacker. As I always say, you know, it's very hard to deal with Barkwhip on turn 3, because you can play him on turn 3. You summon like a Torkon or a Quixotic, and then the following turn you can just evolve him and you start swinging. If you don't hit a shield trigger, your opponent has no real answers, because there aren't really many 5k disruption spells that you can play that early. So your opponent either has to pray for a shield trigger, or they're going to have to Corile to get rid of him ASAP. Or I guess there's also Hopeless Vortex. I always forget about that card. But anyway, moving on. We've also got 4 Energy Stream, 3 mana, draw 2 cards, a big fan. And we've also got 4 Natural Snare. That's the spot removal for nature. Choose one of your opponent's creatures in the battle zone and put it into his mana zone. Yes, Terra Pit is objectively better, but you know, it's nature, so we don't have darkness. We gotta play Natural Snare. We've also taken a look at Mana Nexus. We all know what this card does, I think. Add a card from your mana zone to your shields face down. It's a shield trigger. I think that's pretty good. Now, this guy, you know, he played like pretty much max copies of everything except Cryptic Totem, which I think is reasonable. And yeah, he's got a 50 card deck. I don't know. I think I went through that pretty quickly. I guess the energy that I'm bringing into this video is like representative of the energy that this deck sort of carries. As you can see here, it's quite an aggressive deck. You want to beat down your opponent in the earlier turns. You just want to creature mass them with your +1 creatures or your card advantage creatures like Aquahulkus and Bronze Arm, maybe Emerald if you count him. And then you just, play your Beast Folk, and then you just keep swinging at his shields. Bark Whip is a really strong card too. I guess he has Cryptic Totem in here as an alternate win condition. I can't really see this deck as being a setup deck. And when I say setup deck, I mean you just play a bunch of creatures, you play Cryptic Totem, you break with the Cryptic Totem, and then because you have a whole slew of creatures on your field, you just win the game because your opponent can't use shield triggers. The thing is, I feel like Cryptic Totem is more of an alternate win condition rather than the main win condition. Yeah, so I guess Peter has opted for a more versatile take on the deck as opposed to just going on all-out aggression. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I mean, I don't really think that there's anything wrong with that, especially in a deck that looks to be as consistent as this. So before I get into, I guess, more of a deeper discussion on what potential changes might be good, I do want to say that there isn't really a whole lot I would change about this deck, if at all. Am I saying it's the perfect deck for its time? Maybe. It did win a tournament, but I don't find anything in this deck grossly offensive just right off the bat, or anything much to optimize on. Going by the stats, I am a big fan of this. It's a near 50-50 split between nature and water, so you're going to always be able to play the cards you want, at least I think. Distribution by cost, that's pretty good too. You can see he's got some chunkier cards here. These would be the Corals and the Merfolks, and then these would be like his shield triggers and his Cryptic Totem. Wait, I say shield triggers, but it's just the natural snare. So he's got 10, so that's natural snare, Cryptic Totem. Right, Aqua Surfer. Yes, I was right. It was the shield triggers, which you're putting in with Emerald, may I add. So yeah, I mean, this deck looks like it would flow pretty well. It's got an okay-ish late game, not like a super good late game in my opinion, but I think it has the tools if you have a strong enough early game to win. All right. So going into a discussion, he's not opted to play Crystal Lancer or Crystal Paladin, which I think is fine. I prefer Bark Whip as well. I think he's a lot more aggressive, and well, let's be real here, I think he's more fun to play just because you can play him down early. Aquahulkus and Aqua Surfer, yeah, there's nothing I would change here. I think Aqua Surfer is a much more appropriate trigger than Spiral Gate as well. For the Beast Folk lineup, he's got 4 Bronze Arms, 4 Quixotics, and 4 Torkons. Now, some of the other options you have are, well, we've got the option of Crowwinger. Now, I just want to make it clear that I wouldn't change this Beast Folk lineup, but I do want to have a bit of a discussion on what some of the other available Beast Folk options would be. Okay, so Crowwinger is one. He gets +1k power for each water and darkness creature your opponent has in the battle zone. As you have probably picked up from all of my deck profiles, we see a lot of Aquahulkus. So I think more often than not, Crowwinger is going to be sitting at maybe like 2, 3, or even 4k power some of the time. So I think in terms of replacing Quixotic, who I understand might not be the easiest card to get, I think Crowwinger is a pretty decent substitute. Also, his power stays. It's not like Quixotic, where it runs out at the end of the turn. So I guess the trade-off is kind of like regularity versus explosiveness. Another Beast Folk that I want to talk about is Steel Smasher. So he's a 2-mana 3k Beast Folk who cannot attack players. Now you're thinking, okay, now, well, you might be thinking, well, Jason, didn't you just say that this was an aggressive deck? We want to break shields early. What is the point in including Steel Smasher? You're out of touch. Okay, that is true, but the thing with Steel Smasher is that you play him if you want to guarantee a turn 3 Bark Whip. The thing is, all of the early game creature hate spells will be hitting the 2k power threshold. You have Crimson Hammer, which costs 2 mana, and you have Phantom Dragon's Flame, which costs 3 mana. But what they have in common is they target creatures that have power 2000 or less. With Steel Smasher, if you play him on turn 2, your opponent really has no answer to him. Oh, but Jason, he could play Spastic Missile. Okay, nobody plays Spastic Missile. So yeah, if your opponent has no answer for Steel Smasher, you can just boom, turn 3, evolve into Bark Whip, and then start swinging. I mean, I guess in the wider scheme of things, it's not really that big of a deal because on turn 4 you can pretty much play Bark Whip as a speed attacker. But you know, I just wanted to make that option available to you. Right, I think Torgon is super important. If your opponent breaks him early, you know, can be quite annoying to deal with. 4-4-4 Merfolk Engine. Some might say that's a bit excessive. I think this is the first time I'm seeing a deck with 4 illusionary Merfolk. But I think it makes sense because this guy plays some mana acceleration in the form of Bronze Arm. He's playing a lot of draw cards, so I think he wants to be charging each turn so that he can, you know, set up for bigger plays in the following turns. And because he has no form of mana retrieval like Thrashcrawler or like Flood Valve, I think playing 4 Merfolk makes sense here. For Bark Whip, yeah, that makes sense. I think Bark Whip is a lot more impactful than Fighter Dual Fang, if I'm being completely honest. Yes, Fighter Dual Fang is a double breaker, and yes, he is a tad stronger, but I think Bark Whip, he just seems to do a lot more. Like, once Fighter Dual Fang breaks 2 shields, I feel like your opponent could just as easily get rid of him the following turn. Yeah, he might have done some damage, and if you're in a good situation, you could probably close out the game. But he just doesn't seem as impactful to me as other like boss or pseudo bosses like Bark Whip or maybe even like Crystal Lancer, who is more of a threat in my opinion. Spells, yeah, that's perfectly fine. For Energy Stream, I think it's better than Brain Serum. 4 Mana Nexus and 4 Natural Snare. So all in all, a very straightforward deck. As you can see, there isn't really a whole lot for me to discuss. It's just all-out aggression, all-out fun. I don't think the deck needs Dimension Gate because of all the cards you're drawing, so ideally you're just going to be drawing into whatever you need, and you don't need to waste time searching, and you just go through more cards. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up the deck profile. I think it's a fun deck. Not a whole lot I would change, especially given the card pool at the time. Actually, there was nothing I would change.
Objection. Alright, so I thought there were some more changes that I could have gone over in the video, so I'm just going to be talking about them now. Apologies in advance for the potato quality. I don't have access to my microphone right now. So, I think decks like these can have a bit of trouble closing out games if they drag on for a little bit longer than they would like. So I think Crystal Paladin, who I think I mentioned earlier, is a pretty good solution to that problem. When he hits the field, you bounce all blockers. Since you don't have blockers, that's not so much of a problem for you, so you can, have him hit the field late game and ruin your opponent's day. Now, Crystal Paladin, I feel, is better in this deck than Crystal Lancer because we don't have Aqua Guard, so you can't really play Crystal Lancer as a speed attacker. I feel like it's a big ask to be sitting on 9 mana, hold Aqua Hulkus, Crystal Lancer, boom, speed attacker. I think it's easier to pull off with Aqua Hulkus and Crystal Paladin, who only costs 7. Another way we can finish games is by including teleportation. I think this is a pretty underrated card. It's very versatile, and while I wouldn't include more than 2 copies in any deck, I think it's a really cool board clear for water. So you bounce 2 creatures in the battle zone. You don't even have to just bounce 2 of your opponents. You can actually bounce 1 of your own or 2 of your own if you're feeling really silly. I feel like you could pull off some shenanigans by bouncing your own Corals or Merfolks, but really we want to use this to clear your opponent's board. You can use this to clear your opponent's blockers, or you can use it to get rid of their boss creatures, if not both. I think this deck in particular might struggle with Twin Cannon Sky Terror just because he runs over everything in the deck, but teleportation is actually a fairly good answer to Twin Cannon because you pay 5 mana to get rid of your opponent's 7 mana creature, so even if he can attack straight away, your opponent still has to blow 7 mana to summon him again, and then you just break your opponent's shields. So you kind of stall while you break shields, and your opponent's like, what do I do? So teleportation, pretty good. I might remove, say, 1 copy of Illusionary Merfolk and 1 copy of Coral to make space for 2 of either Crystal Paladin or teleportation. We also have Fairy Life, and Fairy Life is really cool because it helps us go through our deck that much faster. You could say it only puts us ahead in the mana by 1, but it actually makes a huge difference because how quickly it allows you to accelerate the pace of the game. So you go through one card in your deck by playing Fairy Life, And then you actually have more outs to turn for Merfolk. One of the beautiful parts of this deck is you can play Illusionary Merfolk a turn earlier. Let's say you play Emerald turn 2, Bronze Arm turn 3, and then Illusionary Merfolk turn 4. That's actually really powerful. I like that a lot. And if we were to play Fairy Life, that just increases our outs to it. You can mix up your order of operations a little bit. In saying that, I also feel like it's probably best we play Fairy Life with Cryptic Totem. That way we can sort of build our deck around Cryptic Totem, play 3 copies of Cryptic Totem so we don't lose access to him. If we have 3 copies of Cryptic Totem, we're not too afraid of milling him into mana early. We have several copies to get through, and we also are able to play Merfolk a turn earlier, which helps us find him earlier, ideally anyway. To make space for these cards, I would probably remove 1 Beastfolk lineup, maybe the Tarkon lineup, maybe the Quixotic lineup. Maybe I'd remove 2 of each, and then I'd take out 1 Mountain Nexus to make space for 1 more Cryptic Totem.
I guess the natural progression of this deck is to sort of include light if you want a stronger late game, and that is in the new Beastfolk deck profile that I did. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you look forward to more of the videos that I am going to put out. We will also be covering the North American Continental Championships 15 and up division champions, so stay tuned for that. I'll see you guys later.